Hi, everyone. In this week's podcast for Peace and Happiness, we're going to try and um, bring the workshop forward and kind of be able to share in a way that we're hoping you, the audience, can take away a lot of why people love the workshop and why they say it's life changing or transformative. And for that, today, I invited one of our previous attendees, Whitney. How are you?
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, I know that when I reached out to you and I asked you regarding having you as a guest today, I wanted you to tell me what were your two big takeaways. And right away, you answered me and you said that it was how having the authority or the power that you can define your life and you can create it. You spoke about not being able to not be like that kid that I probably should have written out what you wrote, but not being that kid that is told this is good, this is bad, this is healthy, this is not okay. And so tell me a little bit about what that looked like for you at the workshop.
Yeah, so I think um, what I learned in the workshop was that um, a lot of times society has put and defined who you are. Maybe I think one example that I can think of right now is the aspect of the good girl.
Mm.
The idea that, oh, be a good girl, do these things. And so our whole life growing up as a little girl, you kind of get this idea of what it looks like to be a good girl, and striving to be that. And so I think what the peace and happiness taught me was that um, we don't have to be defined by these ideas of the world and the ways in which we're told to act, to think, and that we can really take a step back and recognize what is truth.
Okay.
um,
What about so what was it for you in the workshop that made you kind of really get that at a stronger sense? Are you saying that you never had really seen how scripted or how strong the image or identity of who you were supposed to be was imprinted in you? Are you saying that you felt that, that you recognized that an image was imprinted in you for you to try and be or meet?
an image as far as
The good girl, for example, when you were at the workshop and you say, that you feel like, oh, I don't have to go by these definitions of society. So that's what I'm saying. Was it that you felt in that moment that you could see how that was imprinted on you beforehand?
um
And maybe not
I
that
think,
you're a good girl,
yeah.
but some element.
Yeah, so I don't so maybe that one a little bit, but I think it was just I think there was, something there that I felt like um was
Oh, you're fine. Just that's exactly what we're trying to do is exactly that, is trying to recreate what in the workshop, because a lot of people are like you and like me. And when we hear somebody and hear their experience, it kind of triggers or fires like, oh, I have felt that way. And so the reason I say that is that's constantly one thing that happens at the workshop. I'll put, like a list, like what do we believe if somebody gets fired? Do you remember when I did that?
yeah.
And then do you remember?
The one
Mhm.
that kind of struck out to me too was when we talked about um if someone comes from like a divorced family, how that kind of signifies broken. I am fortunate my parents, didn't aren't divorced. But I think it hit me in a sense of even looking at like friends or others that may have experienced that, um, and thinking about how we relate to others and what we define other people as. Um, and so it made me take a step back in even my worldview of others and thinking like, wow, here here we've grown up with these definitions of you know, how we think of homeless, how we think of people who are divorced, just these titles that we've placed on people, mental health.
We categorize,
Yeah.
quantify, and qualify. Do you think that's something that should be changed? How much we quantify things and qualify things? I mean, because to a certain extent, we do it to be safe, right? Or to
Yeah.
protect ourselves or to know where to go, right? But did you see an element where you were able to see that you needed to pull back on that for yourself, for your home, your family?
Yeah. I think the biggest piece was the awareness. I think peace and happiness for me really brought a sense of awareness to recognizing that we all may have been brought up with these different ideas. And so it's being conscious and being aware, being able to recognize. I think, one of the greatest things that you had said in that workshop that really stood out to me was the statement of let it land. And what that means to really, like, if I'm in conversation with another and someone says something that may not necessarily jive with me or I may not agree with, that I would allow that statement just to land, and instead of it letting it affect me or define how I think, um, I can let that statement land and let it fall and recognize that I need to make my own judgments. Um, or define my own thoughts and just not take whatever someone else is speaking and let that resonate with me.
Most definitely. Or even sometimes it's not just what they speak, it might be what they do, like their actions. And so we will internalize a lot. So,
Yeah,
for example, another example that we use at the workshop is if a spouse cheats on you,
right.
and right away I have the room sound off. What does that mean, right? And is it usually a good light towards the person that got cheated on?
No.
It's not, which
Yeah.
is like they're not at fault, but for some reason, that's who we fault, right? And so, and though even though consciously we might pull back and start to reason, well, okay, no, they're not a fool, you know, or no, it wasn't, it's not even sometimes either fault. It's just things that happen that we need to resolve, like why it's happening, where it's coming from,
Right.
right? But I always feel that spouses, when they talk to me, they internalize, and but what I mean by internalize is they make somebody's actions or words mean something about them. They internalize where from within them it makes them feel or see themselves or think of themselves in a certain light. So it just kind of reminds me when we're talking about when we talk about just let it land, you don't have to internalize it. You don't have
Mhm.
to take it in. And so to me, what I see is that we usually can't let it land because we internalize it or we're afraid of what that might make us.
Yeah, we're afraid of how that would define us or how that would set us apart from others.
Or, for example, in the workshop, often, not all the times, but often I use the example of my son. I don't even remember the story where I asked him a question and he's getting ready to share, like, what he's going through. And I start like, freaking out because I'm like, what is he going to tell me?
Mhm.
He can't even speak. And once he starts putting things into words and it starts seeing what he's saying, I asked the room, what do you think was my reaction? What do you think I wanted to do? Do
Right. Yeah, exactly. You wanted to tell him exactly what to do and
I wanted to fix
wanted to
it.
fix it. Yes.
I
Yeah.
wanted to make it all better. I
Right.
wanted to make it about they're the bad kids, you were good, right? Instead of listening, because the truth of the matter is to listen to his pain and his hurt really was almost unconsciously a slap in my face. Like, where was I? Like, where was I as a mother? How come I
Yeah.
didn't pick up on this when it was going on? And that defensiveness is if we want to raise these kids that, I raised them perfectly,
Mhm.
or I kept them out of harm's way, they're whole and complete. And the reality that life can be messy. And life sometimes, I saw a video today of a mom and she's carrying a baby and another mom comes and takes the baby away. and she hadn't realized that she picked up the wrong child. And then the mom helps her look, and her baby was like, a few feet away, but she was literally carrying the wrong child. And everyone, like in the comments, like, oh, what mom of the year, or, but that's life sometimes. Like, we don't always get it right. And we don't always get it the way we wish we would have.
Yeah.
And to be able to not be as good as the last thing that we did or the last thing that we said, and to just be able to see what is without definition, and then saying, "Ooh, this is not how I want it to be. This is not what I want for you. This is what I want. So, what do I need to do to get from step A to step B?" But we don't. Instead, we look at what happened, and we try to deny it. We try to numb ourselves to what's actually happened or has happened, because we don't want to face the fact that we weren't the perfect mom, or we're not the perfect daughter, or the perfect wife. And so we try to deny it, and we try to put fault or blame in something or someone outside, right? But instead of looking at, like, not faulting others or faulting yourself, but just seeing what is happening, what is, and if it's not, the what is not what you like or you want it to be, how do I get it to be where I want it to be, and what I, mm, you know?
Yeah.
And we expense a lot of our energy trying to fight and force and deny, because we're so scared of, just things quantifies and qualifies. We're always just like we're keeping score.
Yeah, and what I found too is that it comes down to, experiencing the emotion. So much of, those definitions or, like, values we place on things, sometimes even what you're saying with your son, it was just, I have to, like, I am not this, and whatever emotion you're feeling in the moment, you're not allowing yourself to really be there, to be present, to feel whatever you need to feel. Um, I know with my own son, I even, like, there's times that I'm sad and I cry, and a lot of times I can tell that that affects him because he'll say, "Mommy, don't cry, don't cry." But sometimes it's just teaching him that it's okay to be sad.
Yes.
And so we can talk about the hard emotions, that it's not just about, um, always being happy and always keeping on a smiley face, but that sometimes there's beauty in the sadness.
Most definitely. There's
Yeah.
growth in the sadness, there's release in their sadness, there's revelation,
Yeah.
there's an unleashment in the sadness. And I oh my god, you just kind of took my words away, because it's so powerful. It's so true. And when I'm denying myself, not trying to feel, like you said, not allowing myself to feel the emotions, because my son is sharing this hurt, and I want to already fix it or move on from it, really, because I don't want to feel his hurt. I also didn't allow him to have his feelings, because
Mhm.
I'm already not talking with him. As parents, I see this a lot, and I think we don't do it on purpose or intentionally, but we talk at them instead
Right.
of talking with them. And so I think that goes, very far in being able to be understood and really resolving, so we're not carrying, baggage into the future, because we're just going to sweep this away, and we start getting a really big baggage, a really
Yeah.
big bag.
And I think, in that scenario with your son, by not allowing him to be able to express himself, if you would have just shut down, like you said, and you would have just tried to fix, what that does is, in it kind of shows him that, like, okay, it's not safe to feel this or to be upset or, to
Toxic
better
positivity.
understand. Yeah.
Like, we're going to be positive, and we're going to overcome, and it's toxic because we're forcing it, and it's not real, and it's not true. And versus, if deal with the crappy part of it, right?
Yeah.
Feel it out, and then let it go. But if I'm gonna try and force him to be talk at him and tell him, you need to move on, that, that wasn't that important. You just have to understand that's how people are. That's not who you are. They don't find you. If I would have done that, then most definitely it'd be something he'd have to be carrying. on.
Yeah.
So I really, that's my biggest thing. I just wish that I can spread with this podcast is for people to start to see where are we so bent out of shape to prove things, or what if somebody calls me something. Like I ask people sometimes, what really bothers you? And oh, if somebody calls me a liar, and there'll always be a story behind it, like
Mhm.
why they cannot be called a liar. For me, it's a joke in my home, to see that I just take care of myself, and it was this misunderstanding, and I was like 9, and a older adult said, "Oh, you only take care of you." And it was just like, and then I grew up for such a long time, like going above and beyond to show that I care, I want to take
Mhm.
care of people. And it was so funny, that we don't realize, how much we put on ourselves, and it messes with our mental health because we're not coming from things from a open space, a loving space. We're coming from a space of, I'm trying to define who I am by convincing you to see me and talk of me a certain way.
Mhm.
That to me is madness, now that I can see that. Is that
Yeah.
something that you saw change for you?
Yeah, definitely. Um, I think just, taking the time, even though peace and happiness is what feels like such a short time period, um,
Oh, you mean the workshop,
the
like the five
workshop,
hours
the
yeah.
actual time.
Yeah.
Um, but like what I walked away with, as far as like learning how important it was, um, to kind of redefine things, to deal with emotions, to
Where do you see that you
um,
were able to redefine things the most? What was one area or one thing that after that you've redefined differently and that is appeasing to you, or it's something you're very grateful for?
I think the in peace and happiness, one thing that we did, that was very impactful for me was the rewriting of our story. Um, I think that I have always known my worth. Um, I've always known that, like, I'm a kind, compassionate, um, giving person and have
You're a nurse.
very much, yeah, I am a nurse, and very much, um, tend to give so much sometimes of myself that I often forget to take care of myself. Um, and so I think for me, as I rewrote my story during that workshop, I recognized how much I needed to take care of myself. And that by not taking care of myself, how much was I actually giving? And
Oh, wow,
so,
that's a good
yeah,
aspect.
so I just thought, gosh, I really need to, um, in a sense, like fill my cup so
Mhm.
that it can be filled for myself, but overflow to others instead of constantly walking around filling others' cups.
Yes.
And so I think for me, that was huge. That was something that I walked away and immediately walking out the door, like my life was different. And I knew that I had to start taking time for myself.
I love that.
And since I've taken the workshop, that's what I've really worked on.
Taking time for yourself, taking care of you.
Taking time for myself, improving my health, really educating myself, taking time to read books. It's something I really, really enjoy, but and it's hard. It's hard these days. It's really
Yes,
hard
it
to
is.
make the time. Um,
But it's crucial. Sometimes we want to make such an impact in our communities, our societies, our families, the world. And I forget who said it. I forget who said it, but it says, you take care of you and you'll be taking care of me. I'll
yeah,
take care of me, and this way I'll be taking care of you. Like if you took care of you 100% and I took care of me, then when we come together, it's such a powerhouse versus, oh, you need that. Oh, and I'm
yeah,
the sacrificial lamb. And then you in return feel so indebted because you know I went above and beyond for you. And then you want to do it back. And we're always just kind of like trying to put band-aids on each other versus really taking care of ourselves is one of the biggest things. I see it with mothers. You know, they sacrifice everything for their kids. And then I ask them sometimes, do you want your kid to, be stressed and, run with their cup dry and, doing above and beyond for others, even at the expense of themselves? And they look at me like, no, because they would never want that for their kid. I go, oh, because like that's what you're modeling.
Mhm.
And so that's what they're learning. And I always know my kids always make jokes, but they say like, and it's not selfish to go after your passion and your dreams, but it really is powerful for them. And they always I my son sent me a text. This was a few months back. And I thought it was kind of weird because it was like, I love you, mom. Thank you for always like being who you are. And I was like, he's not mushy like that. So I was like, this is a weird text, but whatever. So hours later, at the end of his work shift, I get a call and I'm like, oh, so yeah, just I had already forgot about the text. And he's talking to me. He's like, Mom, I had this nightmare. I had kids. I had two kids. I'm like, that's your nightmare? He's like, yeah, mom. And I was so sad because I had these dreams, but I couldn't go after my dreams because now I had these kids. And mom, I was terrified. And then I woke up and he said to me, and then I remembered, yeah, that might be society's that, oh, once you have your kids, this life is over. But my mom didn't do that. My mom has always lived for her dreams with us along. And they always tell me that it removes so much pressure from them to not make them my world.
Mhm.
And that I teach them that I have this passion for what I do. And so he says that if my mom did it, if I ever do have kids, I'll be able to do too. It doesn't mean when I have kids, it's over and it's all about them. And so I think that's a concept that a lot of mothers hearing this right now and not knowing the in depth of what I'm saying can have a big resistance. But we truly do take care of our children when we take care of ourselves. Kind of like when
Yeah.
they say if the husband and wife really, of how the husband loves the wife,
Mhm.
it'll really support the children, right? It's the same thing. When we really take care of us, we're really taking care of them versus being that society deems as good because we're, sacrifice ourselves everything for them. So,
Yeah.
but thank you so much for today. I
Yeah,
really
thank you.
appreciate it. Last question. Would you recommend somebody to do the peace and happiness workshop?
Oh, hands down, yes, I would. Um, I think everyone I actually did it with my best friend, and I think personally we both walked away with different things that impacted us.
Hmm.
There was different ways that things spoke to us,
Yes.
but I would definitely recommend it for someone else.
I always tell people, of course, I would say that, right? Because I teach it, but I always tell people go to it 2 or 3 times because every time you're going to get
Yeah.
something. I've had quite a few people have done it 2 or 3 times and they tell me, it was like I attended a whole other thing because they are a different person in their mindset. So
Mhm.
definitely. So thank you for your time today. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you so much.
And for you, thank you for joining us from my heart to yours. Have a beautiful day.